Hi, welcome back to the second hour of this Tuesday edition of Focal Point on AFR Talk. Just a programming note, we'll have a special pre-Thanksgiving program tomorrow. It'll be available to all of you on our radio network. We're going to have a different program for those of you that are watching on television or tune in to video streaming. But if you tune in to our audio streaming, AFR.net, or you listen to one of our radio stations, you will hear a special Thanksgiving program tomorrow right here on Focal Point. So we just wanted to give you a heads up that that is coming. Now, yesterday, as I mentioned, we ran into a media freakout over Marco Rubio's remarks on the age of the earth. Now, he was asked by Gentleman's Quarterly magazine, GQ, how old do you think the earth is? Now, Marco Rubio, I thought, gave a very deft answer. I'm not a scientist, man. That question is one of the great mysteries. So he said, look, I'm not a scientist. I'm not qualified to talk on that question. And then he says, I think the age of the universe has zero to do with how our economy is going to grow. And then he added, I'm not a scientist. I don't think I'm qualified to answer a question like that. So I think that's fine. I mean, he's out there getting votes. This is just a gotcha question. It's just like the Pharisees trying to trip up Jesus in something that he might say. But it's interesting to me that the media felt like if they could get Senator Marco Rubio to say that the earth is young, as the Bible indicates, that somehow they could have hurt him with that comment. And yet, according to a Gallup poll released this summer, 46% of the American people believe that God created human beings in their present form within the last 10,000 years. So they believe at least mankind is less than 10,000 years old, and by implication the world and the universe. Another 32% believe that God created everything and used evolution to do it. But what that means is 78% of the American people believe that God was directly involved in the process of creating everything that exists, the universe, the earth, and life. Only 16% or 15% believe that there is no God or that God didn't have anything to do with it at all. So if Marco Rubio comes out and says, yeah, I believe God created everything, that's 78% of the people in America. These are the people that he wants to vote for him in 2016. They're with him on that. That's not a political loser. That's a political winner. Well, Marco Rubio said, look, I'm not qualified to talk about the age of the earth because I'm not a scientist. So let's bring in a scientist who is qualified to talk about the age of the earth. We've had Dr. Terry Mortenson on Focal Point before. He is a systematic theology, history of geology lecturer and researcher for Answers in Genesis, AIG. He has a PhD in the history of geology. So I guess that wouldn't, Terry, I guess that doesn't technically make you I don't know, does that make you a scientist if you got?
No, I'm a historian.
You're a historian. All right, so we got to get that clear. But you have a PhD in the history of geology. This is from the University of Coventry in England. He's got an MDiv from Trinity Evangelical Divinity School in Chicago. So Dr. Mortenson is qualified both to address issues that have to do with science as well as with Scripture. So, Terry, welcome back to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Well, good to be with you, Brian.
Well, Terry, specifically, the reason I wanted to bring you on the program is to talk about scientific evidences for a young Earth. Now, first of all, I want you to take just a minute or two to walk through just very briefly the scriptural indications that the earth is young, and then we'll look at some of the scientific confirmation for that.
Well, there's a number of lines of argument. One is the indications right in Genesis 1 that the days of creation are literal days. God defines day as the light portion of the light-dark cycle, and then the whole light-dark cycle. The very first time the Hebrew word for day is used in Genesis 1, and then he numbers the days, 1 day, 2nd day, 3rd day. He has the repeating refrain, there was evening and there was morning 1 day, there was evening and morning a 2nd day. And then on the 4th day, God created the sun, moon, and stars and said he created them so that we could measure years and seasons and days, and the movement of the heavenly bodies do enable us to measure those literal time periods. You have the 4th commandment in Exodus 20, where God told the children of Israel to work 6 days because he created in 6 days. You have Jesus' statement in Mark chapter 10, verse 6, where he's responding to a question on divorce by the Pharisees. And he says, but from the beginning of creation, God made them male and female. And then he quotes from Genesis 1 and 2, So Jesus believed that Adam and Eve were right back there at the beginning of creation. And the sixth day on a 4,000 time scale, which is the biblical time scale, is the beginning of creation. And then we have the Genesis genealogies in Genesis 5 and 11, which give us the ages of the patriarchs from Adam to Noah and from Noah to Abraham, and the age that each of the patriarchs was when the next patriarch in the line was born. And from various scriptures, we know that Abraham was born around 2000 BC. So the age of the earth, if there are no gaps in the genealogies, the age of the earth is about 6,000 years.
So, and the point about the genealogies here, Terry, and I just want to tack that down, is these genealogies are unbroken in Genesis 5 and Genesis 11 because it's not just a sequence of names, Adam, and then there was this, and then there was that, but the scriptures give the age of Adam's son, or gives the age of Adam when his son was born.
Right.
And then it gives the age of Adam's son when Adam's son's son was born. So you have an unbroken line of genealogy. We know roughly when Abraham lived. There's not much variation there. It's got to be around 2000 BC for a host of reasons. So you just can walk that back, and that gets you back to around 4,000 plus BC, give or take, and that means 6,000 years ago.
Right.
Well, let's talk about the fact, what they were trying to get Michael Rubio in trouble for was a question about age of the earth. They think this is a gotcha question. So we've seen that the Bible indicates this is a young earth, a young universe, maybe 10,000, 6,000, less than 10,000 years old. We've got just about 2 minutes before the break, but maybe, Terry, start with one of the scientific evidences that confirm the Bible's account that the earth is not that old.
Well, there's a story right on Answers in Genesis website today related to that, and that is carbon dating. A lot of people think carbon dating is a way they date rocks, but it's not used to date rocks. Other methods, other radiometric dating methods are used. But Dr. Andrew Snelling, who's a PhD geologist and has done research on radiometric dating, wrote the article on our website today and talks about the fact that radioactive carbon, carbon-14, is found in coal and wood and oil and diamonds that have been found in rock layers that the evolutionists date by other geological means to be millions and millions or hundreds of millions of years old. And carbon-14 has such a short half-life, only a little over 5,700 years, that if the whole Earth was filled with carbon-14, was made up of nothing but carbon-14, it would all be gone in about 1 million years. So there's a serious problem with these dating methods, and it's the assumptions that go into the methods that make the conclusions erroneous.
So we'll come back and kind of pick up the conversation with Dr. Terry Mortenson from Answers in Genesis. But, Terry, if I understood you correctly, what you're saying is the half-life of carbon-14 is about 5,700 years, and it decays, and it disappears in time. And if the Earth was more than 1 million years old, there'd be no carbon-14 left anywhere in the world on Earth, even if the entire Earth had been carbon when the process started.
Right, and therefore the things that have been dated in rocks that are supposedly millions and hundreds of millions of years old, they have measurable amounts of carbon-14. They can't be that old.
We're talking here with Terry Mortenson, Answers in Genesis, back in 2, Focal Point AFR Talk.